You might describe these as the year of revolution. It was a year of Watts burning. It was a year of in which everything was turned upside down. And I suppose it's when you have those times, and if you have the ears to hear, there many secrets are disclosed that then become stuff out of which the new spirit is given form. But it was a violent time.
Yeah, 1966. Now that was right after the Watts riots, wasn't it?
Hmm?
And we came to Chicago, and I thought it was probably the most despicable place I'd ever been. And
Where were you?
wanted to kill him.
So he's the one that drove you into it.
Definitely.
The wealthy suburb,
So which wealthy suburb?
Downey.
Down in California.
In Downey, California. And what were you doing in Downey?
Minister of Education.
For a
For church.
Presbyterian church?
Yeah.
Okay. And what had captured your imagination about the Ecumenical Institute?
Well, I had for some time been extremely critical of the historical church and the way in which it didn't relate to the need of this world. I was looking around for a place of entry. I heard of the Ecumenical Institute, and I went.
You took a course, didn't you?
Yeah, three-day course.
Was it PLC?
PLC.
Yeah.
And it's the best stuff that I heard anywhere. It was just hard for the historical church to pay attention to that kind of human suffering and anger, which seemed to call into question everything that had been done. But it was that encounter and talk with Joe Pierce.
So Joe taught your PLC? Joe Pierce?
Yeah. Slicker. Pierce. Matthews.
Wow. You got the A team.
And Hilliard.
And
Yeah.
Hilliard.
Well, the team was pretty small then.
Yeah, it was a small team. But you got the heavy dose.
Oh, yeah.
So were you immediately hooked? Immediately captured by that? Yeah.
I think so.
I know, so he insisted that we go to Chicago.
So Ed said we're moving to Chicago. That was it. That was it.
Well, I taught preschool. And at one point, I managed the kitchen. And let's see. Taught in the academy. And did lots of weekend teaching.
It was quite a journey. two things were very important. One was that people dealt with the depth of their lives. Two, it had to have some rational form. That was related to that. The work of Kierkegaard, the work of our own staff in dealing with the human suffering and pathos was inescapable. And we really lived among the people. And I was assigned to work with the old people, the elders, who lived in a apartment building 13 stories high at the end of Fifth City. So Fifth City was really a focal point for our task. What does the new community look like? What is it that is humanness when you live in a community where rats are there by the millions? Maybe that's an exaggeration.
I used to watch them every night
Not-
when I'd go home.
Not an
They'd
exaggeration.
walk like this in front of me in the sidewalk. Yes,
Yeah.
that's no exaggeration.
Dealing with the inner city and with how do you enable local people to have an experience of greatness of their own lives. That was, for me, very, very important, because I worked with the old people, and they would come alive when they saw that human need within our 13 square block area, whatever it was. But one of the things we did was working with the elders to create a Black Heritage course. And that was so exciting, where these old people became the teachers. There was a great deal of interest by Joe and others in the elders. And they came alive. They recreated the story. Then they taught this story to the children in the school.
Dressed in African outfits that they made.
Wow, wow.
It was stupendous.
So this touch with the primordial, I think, was very important. The archaic. In the primordial and the archaic is a secret to humanness, I think. And I learned an awful lot there. It was my own tutorial.
So you got your tutorial from helping to put together the whole Black Heritage course,
Right.
with those elders and their wisdom, and that incredible connection between them and the school children.
Yeah, Donna McCluskey was a key person in that as well. Very powerful woman. Too powerful for her time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she helped to push the depth dimension.
One of the things about Joe Matthews, I'm sure Joe Matthews was a very brilliant man, which he did not flaunt, but he really was a brilliant man. But his passion was intense, And he had passion for a number of things, not least of which was making sure that women took their place. And he had this wonderful wife who never was one of these new women. She was always very gentle and very powerful at the same time. She was a great model for me. But his passion was infectious. He liked to put it in a really gruff way, because he believed that we had to stop being nicey nice in the church and emphasizing just being nice to each other, and start thinking about what it means to be caring of the world and going in the hard places and risking our lives. He invited us to risk our lives, and that's invigorating on a very deep level. And I learned things in the process. I have memories of doing my stake calling, sucking it up, going up these stairs where I literally ducked bullets.
Wow.
People would be fighting in those apartments, and they'd be shooting at each other, and they'd be shooting down the stairs. And it was scary. And it was exciting at the same time. It was an adventure. You know, I was a bit of a mouse. But I was so obedient that there I was doing that job, whatever, and scared to death. And it was such an amazing revelation. When I went calling for my children in preschool, I discovered that these little kids I had in my class, you know, they lived in an apartment with nothing in it. Nothing. I saw in a kitchen maybe a few scraps, bread usually. That's what they were getting to eat. There was nothing in the refrigerators. Everybody slept in the same bed. It was amazing. It was so illuminating. You know, you saw the streets were a mess and all that sort of stuff. And you wondered, you know, why aren't people more responsible? And then you see how they live. They're just scraping to stay alive. And that was an amazing revelatory event for me. And to be able to enable them to see possibility, find ways to get out of that situation and build their lives, and to watch them literally take on new life, that was a powerful experience.
I guess the first thing you'd have to say is that the myth and the story are extremely powerful activities. And the first side of it is activities that had to do with self-depreciation. The worst thing you could call a black person was black. That was the worst thing you could call you black scum. That was down the avenue towards guns and fighting one another. You're no good black. And we found that was their story, that they were nobodies on a very painful trajectory every day of their life. I worked with the youth. and help them to recover that dignity. And using symbol and art and music were very important aids in this. One of our songs was I Live in Fifth City. I live in Fifth City. The West Side is my home. I live in Fifth City. Won't leave it alone. Gonna build it for Chicago. Gonna give it to the world. Gonna build it for Chicago. Gonna give it to the world. People of Fifth City are black, and that is great. Gonna give our blackness to the world, and the world will celebrate, and so on.
Yeah, it was interesting, they initially didn't write those songs, but they really picked up those songs. And we used them everywhere. It was an amazing thing, because everything in Fifth City said, you're dirt. Everything.
And so we had festivals in which thousands of people came and celebrated the facticity of being somebody.
Well, that was really, really important. Getting them to, they were similar in many ways to Fifth City, only worse, because they'd virtually given up. And to get them to recover their myths and talk about them was extremely important to them. And to see that those were important things. They talked about important parts of your life. And made a huge difference. We encouraged them to, do their dances again. The dances were all acting out myths. And some of them were more current myths. Talked about the black trackers and all those things. It was in some of their dances that they made. It enabled them to articulate what had happened to them and to begin to put things together in a new way. And to see that it wasn't, I would say, psychologically, I think they probably saw that, gee, we aren't essentially bad. Look what's happened to us, for goodness sakes. And yet they didn't wallow in that. They just began to build. And it was quite an incredible experience. It was a up and down experience. Every once in a while, we made them take a pledge to limit their alcohol consumption to, let's see, it was for the whole community, 1 flagon of wine and a beer each week.
Each week. How did that work?
2 beers. It worked quite well. And so we didn't say, no more alcohol. We got them, it was agreement. I mean, they decided what the amount was going to be. Because what was happening was the women were being beaten to pieces. And kids were dying of starvation because they were living in despair and acting that out in alcoholism and killing themselves. And then we used symbols. And Ed was a genius at getting them to do that. And they would.
What was his secret?
Well, you have them put on a play. You have them do their dances. And they were in charge of those symbols. And you see a Wanja in the other room, and the snake. They were very important symbols for them.
They all said something about life, and to bring those back, brought those people to life. It was amazing. I mean, really, it was shocking to see what happened to them. And we made them. We said, you know, we're not going to stay here if you're going to just get drunk all the time, because there's no point in it. So if you really want to do something, and we're willing to help you, we'll give our 100%, but you got to control the alcohol, so what are we going to do about it? So they thought it through, and they decided, well, could they have 2 beers once a week? And a flagon of wine, to share.
Among all the men.
Yeah. And so we said, okay, but no more. That's going to have to be it. And so we did that. And then we made it a celebration. They would put on their dances at that time. And it became a great time. Now that doesn't mean they didn't lapse, because they did.
But nonetheless, it was...
And when did that happen? What we said is, all right, well, let's look around and see what happened here. Let me take them on a tour. You know, they'd be brokenhearted. You know, here's your beautiful slide that you got for the kids. Look at it, it's all broken. And they were wounded when they saw, really took stock of what that kind of stuff did to their lives. And so even though they would have setbacks, they kept working on it, and leaders began to emerge, and people began to be able to take responsibility, and they didn't have to get drunk all the time, like occasionally. And basically ended up that they didn't. And then after we had gone, and I came back once to do a course, you know, I held it, Australians wanted to hold a course in Umbulguri. And so we did that, and at that time Bishop Witt wanted to come, who was in charge of all those
Anglicans.
the Anglican Church and their missions. And he came to visit, and you know, they were really scared. They wanted to take down all their symbols. He said, no, you don't want to do that. And Bishop Witt came in, and they were just shaking in their boots. And we told him about it. And he went to a meeting, he said, don't you dare take those symbols down. He is a wonderful man. And it enabled them to be linked back to the church with some integrity. And thank goodness for Bishop Witt. He was a particularly fine man. But that had to happen, or their growth would not be complete. They had to resolve that and get their stature in the situation that had taken it away. And that happened. It was an amazing thing to watch that happen. Well, I've kind of forgotten the jargon anymore, but what I know is that because we secularized the gospel and refused to talk about it in churchy terms so that it could become part of people's lives. And they could see it as a real thing in their lives. And so I think that was one role from the side of doing courses and things like that. We were getting people to stop using all this subterfuge and get real with their lives and realize that you really can. You can be real. You won't die. And
you can...
Matthew's always talked about selfhood. But you achieve selfhood that way. And you don't use selfhood irresponsibly. Selfhood is something that you can invest in the world and make a difference.
When you use language, you took it and enabled people to have a whole different kind of image, self-image. One of the great things that we did with the little children, they begin the day with the ritual. Who are you? I'm the greatest. Where do you live? In the universe. Not in the slum. Where are you going? To dance to life. And that began their day. Told them a story of who they really were. And that's true, I think, across the world. You're good if. You're important if. You're somebody if. Because you yourself, get rid of that old self. You call them to literally see that their being as it was in history was a great thing. And that is true. It's truer than true. And when you believe that you're an important human being, and you have symbols and images that constantly break that open, you're on the road to freedom. And freedom is really the aim of human community. Structures are there to give you a new birth of the greatness that your own life is. And we can talk about this later. But to have these new symbols bombarding you was one of the important strategic tasks of community reformulation. And this community reformulation kind of sterile sounding, but that goes along with the symbols, and the symbols are kind of the generator of the community formulation. Working with the youth, the gangs, I went calling with the head of the vice lords. We went and talked to people, and he began to tell the story himself. So important. I don't think you can do community reformulation without releasing the greatness of the human spirit. And letting nothing keep that new image, that new message from being widely distributed in depth and in breadth.
I think it's had a rough road.
It's a good statement.
I do. I think that it's very hard to take time. I think that's probably the Americans' greatest Achilles heel. Do. Yes.
Then you're good. If you do, you don't do, you're bad. And if they don't do the way that you think they should do,
I thought for some people that experience was very nourishing, and for others, oftentimes including myself, it was, it didn't speak to me. It was a bit too artificial, but the idea of including that in your life was a treasure. And learning how to do it well was the problem. There was a little bit too much bowing and rump in the air stuff for me. But what he was doing was drawing from other cultures. That's what the Muslims do. And that was really useful, and it was a subtle thing, because you begin, when you put your butt in the air, you begin to stand where they stood. And at that time, if you may remember, we really had a hard time even dealing with the differences in the Christian religion, Catholics versus Protestants, and there were the upscale Protestants and the, the bell ringer Protestants. It went on and on. We really spent more time worrying about our differences than re-grasping the heart of what our religious heritage was, and that was Matthew's tremendous gift, because he put it in secularized terms and got us to get real. And that was, that has left an imprint forever. Well, I think among other things, it's very different from when we were young, because we're very secular now. I think that, so in today's world, I think you're in a sense reintroducing spirituality. And for me, it is finding the wonder in everything, allowing people, our little people especially, to really appreciate the wonder in things and growing things and in the way the clouds go across the sky. In fact, for us too, it's nourishing to me to watch those clouds, to reflect on the journeys into space and the awesomeness of that, and just to be, that meditation is about engaging, really. It's not about withdrawing. It's about engaging in a very special way, allowing things to speak to you, listening, and learning how to speak back. And I think that was a great gift, tremendous gift. And even though I'm not sure I use it all that well, I think I use it all the time, actually. It's because I always reduced it to, you got to write something, or you got to have your special time and place. I think that those are good things. Those are good disciplines, but the real discipline to me is being attentive to life itself in all its wonder and glory, and to participate in its tragedy and stand in the position of relating to it and making a difference in it. Those things are what spirituality is about for me now. Not about going to some place and doing the right set of things. And then maybe you have to create new rituals and things to help remind yourself. And that was another gift of Matthew's. He talked about reminding yourself, about becoming conscious, being present to things rather than going through the motions. And unfortunately, that's how we had experienced the church. It had gotten a little bit lost in going through the motions and a little bit scared of asking. See, if you start asking real questions, then you may get some nasty answers. And you may discover that you don't like all of those things, and that loving ain't so easy, and all that sort of stuff. And how do you deal with judgment and forgiveness? Those are realities in life for everybody. And those are profound things. Those are the things that are left in my heart that I want to pass on to other people, however you may express it. But those are the things that make life rich and wonderful. And, you know, and recognizing things. We're more honest today, I think, partly because of Matthews and his decision to be brutally honest, to be honest about what we don't like and what we wish were different and what we wish we didn't have to do, and to decide to do the things we have to do, knowing that that's a self-conscious decision, not just something that you got stuck into. And so all those things are learning about freedom. So we put RS1 into all those aspects of life, and RS1 was helpful because it used really secular experience to understand the gospel, instead of putting the gospel over here. It's in a book, and you might look at the book, you might not. And that is forever speaking to me.
There needs to be a transitional language, a transitional doing that is really the foundation of the anchor points of this new spirit. First, in meditation, the anchor point is consciousness. Oh, well, in meditation, we don't really meditate very often. Then the second dimension is contemplation, and that which is the key to contemplation is encountering the mystery. We demystify much of our religious language by ordinaryizing it. But this is such a powerful dimension. We do not know how to do it very well. And the other 2/3 of the world knows quite a bit more than we do from the West. And we kind of need to have an encyclopedia, a spiritual encyclopedia, that helps to make the transition from the, quote, this world to the, quote, the other world. Mystery is there in everything. How to ferret it out and to have it illuminate your life is just great. Absolutely human. And then finally, prayer. Prayer has to do with freedom. And much of what the writing of the 20th century, the 21st century in spirit literature really should be fleshing out those three dimensions. Gives a framework for creating the new disciplines. releasing finally your whole being to freedom. And grounding that very well. That's all. This is so critical from my perspective. I used to, and I like to look at stars. And as you watch the stars, they mutate. And rather than being out here, some trillion light years away, they become here. I and that star are one. It's part of my universe. I'm related to it. And just imagine I contain the Earth galaxy. I contain the galactic world in here. That's who I am. I have that greatness to me. And I do. And if you forget that, or you don't operate on it, you just want to do good little things, rather than embrace this incredibly majestic and glorious, fearsome, awesome universe. I am the universe. Now that is language that is real to me. It's a happening. It's a language of connectedness rather than an atom. It's how all these many galaxies cohere together. Right now we have to, the task before us, I think, is getting these new linkages between the self and the universe in ways that can be productive.
Yes.
Like I've already charted, just rough, what the dimensions of this new interaction between the self and the universe are.
You've done charts on this.
I just played around with it. Then the second step is when you look up into that starry night, what is the shape of your multiverse? Maybe. What if you take quantum theory, which is about as far out as you can get right now, it will give you multiverses. And what does this mean? What does this mean for our interaction? I don't know. I mean, but you have to get what I would call kind of the hard stuff. And that has to do with gravity, it has to do with speed of light and all these scientific things that this is what kids should be learning in our schools. is the shape of the new emerging universe. This is so fragile in terms of our perception, but it's so exciting to re-grasp your identity. And there's so many ways of looking at that. Biologically, your identity with the apes and our ancestors. You begin to spell out this connected universe. It's awesome. You're never bored. I tell you, I think one of the first things you got to required is some kind of a glossary.
A glossary for the transitional language.
Yeah. I've been reading, what is this guy's name?
Stephen Hawking.
That's right. That's right.
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, he should be our mentor.
He should be.
He should be our mentor.
Yes.
One
yes.
of our.
Yes.
Who are the key mentors?
Yes.
That we would look to give us shape, give us a viable shape of this phenomenon called the universe. Now I can't. When I take a look at our galaxy, there's supposed to be 2 billion stars in our galaxy. Now we have another 1 billion galaxies. I can't get my mind around this, and nor can anybody else, except people who want to do that. But this is just stuff. This is just ordinary stuff. We haven't mapped it. We don't have a way of gridding it. What does our universe look like? We don't know.
Yeah. What?
Well, one of the things I think is certainly in our courses, we made people responsible. They're responsible for their answers, for participating. In fact, we demanded they participate. But anyway, but that was important, especially at that time. And I think that making it more possible to participate is a really important thing for our time. And I think that we have two things going on, at least two, probably a lot more than two, but two things I think of is we have tremendous amount of input because of TV. But we don't have as many avenues for output, meaningful output. So, yes, people can have hobbies and interesting things to do, but not necessarily interesting contributions to make. And the way business and industry works is that it's kind of molecular, and you have this little piece that you do. And I would guess that some of them have learned to begin to help people see the whole, see themselves as part of the whole, but at the same time, everything we do is very molecular and difficult to see your contribution unless you are specifically engaged in something that is demanding your specific gifts or attention.
But what I also hear you saying is, and that the individual sees themselves as part of the whole, and whatever that meaningful output is. And as Ed was talking about, linking the selfhood to the universe and establishing that very real connection, personal connection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, Well,
That should be part of the curriculum for every child.
Say more.
Oh, to know his universe.
Yeah.
To know what kind of units of measurement you're working with. To know what are the quasars, what are the units of content. I mean, what's our map of the universe? Our children should be knowing that. And then they need to go and do the same thing with the microverse. The microverse, no wonder if you deal with the microverse, it is as unfathomable as the macroverse. But we don't know much about it. And we only have the last 22 years have we been able to put the microscopes, electron microscopes. Then attaching those to ways to measure. I don't know, but I'm as amazed as of the microverse as I am at the macroverse. But they're part of who I am. And as we were talking before, I take one little cell out of my finger. In that cell, and I have probably 500,000 cells. I don't know how many there are. In each one of those cells is the blueprint for the whole body. That doesn't just the university and the particular the universal. I would wait a while on that until we get a good map. So it's not a religious map, which so easily could become, we want truth. And then from that comes religion.
what I just said about the walking path is part of it.
Yeah.
I always had trouble with daily office, but I did it. I think that what's great about the daily office was it was like keeping the voice going through time, keeping the story alive through time, even though it was not particularly nourishing from perspective of your, cogitating on any of that stuff. You were rehearsing. It was like, what would I compare it to? Anyway, it was keeping it going, keeping the story alive, keeping it going. And then I think that our courses were a really important part of that. It was both teaching and being in them, and we required that they be interactive. We required that they be disciplined, and we worked in teaching them to allow something to happen in people's lives. They were transformative. That was one of our goals. And I think that's an element that's not very apparent these days. And maybe if we really, we worry a little bit about isolation in our time, and everybody speaking the same stuff, not much thinking sometimes, and yet we don't seem to have a way to do it. We get lost in busyness, and we really do have busy lives, and yet there's sometimes our busyness isn't really terribly driven. We put ourselves in busyness. But the thing is, we don't have many good ways to do otherwise. That's why I like the walking path. Because people go out and take their walk. And we have a guy that comes out, he religiously
Yes.
flies his model airplane. He must be 80-something. I can remember there was a time when his son used to bring him out here to fly his airplanes. And now I see him coming out by himself, flying his airplanes. And I just find that intriguing. It's like deciding that you're going to be engaged in some way.
Well, and there certainly is a rehearsal of connectedness that happens either walking down the trail and being connected with my body and being connected with all of this. And there's an experience of connectedness that happens. And for this guy with his model airplane, I'm certain that there's likewise this ritual demonstrates and experientially manifests a certain connectedness that so somehow this happens in all of our lives, but it's an interesting question for me. What is this worship stuff today?
Yeah.
And how do we learn to talk about it with some new language as well?
I think that's true. I think it's real difficult.
Yeah, and I would say it's the language of connectedness. That's the new modus activa. I think. You have to show me something better. If you begin to get a curriculum, and you begin to have multiple contributors, I like the work of
Moyers?
Bill Moyers, yeah.
Bill Moyers.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no
Yes,
Bill
I
Moyers
cried
around
when Bill
anymore.
Moyers-
You got the scientific stuff. That's the God pole, is the scientific stuff for my brother. The academy is the Holy Spirit. No, is the sun pole.
The academy.
Yeah.
And which pole is it? The science pole.
The Son,
The sun.
the Father,
The
Son,
Father,
and Holy
Son. Okay. Okay.
And the Spirit, and then the third pole on that is social transformation, is the freedom pole. And those are pretty good organizing categories.
Absolutely.
We don't live in a religious world anymore.
And you're making a very important statement in that we don't live in a religious world anymore.
Right.
Even though a lot of people are still dragging the corpse or whatever.
I suffer from it. I feel bereft in a way. And it's not because anybody took it away, it's because, oops, it's just gone. It's gone because it came out of a different world. And we have to bring those things back for our own time in the very different world that we live in. And we live in an awesome universe, but it is so awesome that we can't even begin to get a hold of it. I mean, we've done some awesome things. We went to the moon. What's awesome about that? That's the closest thing. you know, it's too awesome. And so what are you going to do with it in your life? Nothing. So we have, I think, a difficult time in really grasping it. Although I'll tell you, if you read Stephen Hawking's Universe, that's a wonderful book. I mean, it's an exciting book. He brings some of the awesomeness. He makes you part of the universe. He's quite good at that. And really, I always have flowers because growing outside, because that's part of how I do it. It's part of, and I love to watch the birds. I mean, these all sound crazy, I'm sure, but I mean, you see these little worlds going on, and it's very interesting. The birds come and drink out of Wheatsy's bowl. Wheatsy won't drink the water anymore. She wouldn't drink it when they've been drinking in it. But you know, when my flowers come out in the spring, you know, I love them. I love the brilliance that they bring. I don't know how to talk about it really. It's just that it's because I'm not wedded to gardens, but I love to see that. I love to have that there. I'm willing to put a little effort into it to make that happen. Not because I want to win the garden championship, which I wouldn't do, or anything like that. It's because my yard needs that little area of brilliance. It does something for me.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to have awareness. I don't know. People who are younger than I am, you know, they're very, very busy. And I think that this is one of the perils of our time, is becoming so busy that we don't take time to reflect. What's the wonder of being in the office? It's getting out of the office.
It's probably the window.
The window, yeah.
You can see the light.
But you know, we have to do that. We have to have new ways to, not because they're so new, but because we had other ways in the past. And we have to have ways to give ourselves connectedness, awesomeness, nourishment. Those are things we need. And if we don't care about our neighbors, that doesn't make us good or bad as much as it makes us bereft. And that's the thing that we need to start thinking about.